I was waiting on the broadcast is live graphic to pop up. Thank you, Chris.
I didn't know if it showed up on everybody's end. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
He is
Well,
sassy.
well, no,
He slept through the last podcast. How am I supposed to fucking know if he knows
I've been
how the
running
technology
content
works?
since 6 a.m., so I'm right here ready to go. Chris Krogman, welcome in to the Believe in Monsters podcast. We're a proud member of the Believe Network. We got another fun episode tonight as the Chicago Bears are making waves as we've closed minicamp, and now all eyes are on training camp. Welcome in our good friends, Lucas Berry, bringing the expertise, and Chris Krogman bringing the experience on the Believe in Monsters podcast tonight. We bring in an old friend, a great friend of the show, Michael Guss. Michael Guss, offensive line expert. You can find him on the Twitter machine at MichaelGuss57. And we are very, very pleased to have him join the program tonight to break down what in the world is going on with the offensive line, as many strange things have been happening around Bears minicamp. And, what do we make of it heading into training camp? So before we get into it with Michael Guss, Chris Krogman, how's it been, man? How you doing?
I'm good, Joe. I'm good. I had yesterday off. My company celebrates Juneteenth. It's the first year I've ever had that off, so that was nice. Nice long weekend. Excellent national holiday. Well, should be a national holiday, but yeah, good weekend. Hung out with the boys. Took my son to the driving range again, and kids are loving it. Every time we go to the driving range, it pours rain for like 5 minutes, and then he blasts the ball down the driving range for a little while. But
you showing any promise?
Oh yeah, this kid's got it. His hand-eye coordination already is pretty solid. I mean, he's 6 years old, and it's the second time out, and he'll hit it pretty solid.
Heck yeah, Live Tour, here we come.
Something like that. Yeah, I'm not accepting that oil money, but that's okay. I already give them enough for my gas, dude. Gas is $5 a gallon, bro.
You may as well get something back from them. They're throwing money around like it's nothing. Lucas Berry, how's your golf game and how are you doing tonight? Welcome into Believe in Monsters, and get us going with our guest, Michael Guss.
The golf game is going in the wrong direction. Luckily, we still have some time to work out the kinks before Krogman and I's big golf tournament. Been watching some videos on Wolf Creek there, Chris, and
Nice.
It's I feel like it's scaring me the more I watch about it.
Oh yeah, it's great.
I'm seeing like these
You're gonna lose all
scratch.
kinds of balls.
Yeah, I'm seeing like these scratch golfers be like, yeah, this course is absurd. Like, I don't think this place exists. It looks like it's from a video. It is from a video game. So awesome. Yeah, it's not trending in the right direction right now, but still some time to work out the kinks. Otherwise, we got 35 days to training camp. I just looked it up. July 26th is when the Bears go back. Where are they doing it now? They're not. They moved locations,
Hallis?
right? They do it at Hallis Hall.
Yeah.
So
bye Bourbonnais.
We'll see. I don't know. Are they going to change? Do you guys know if they're going to change any of the policies because of the new regime, or is it going to be the same old kind of lockdown on training camp that we've had?
Did I see our
from
friend Usaid announced 11 open practices? Is that what I saw?
Maybe. I have no idea.
I know, like from what Usaid has told us before, the reason they are so strict is their PR guy, their public relations guy. So I don't know if that changed with the new regime. Probably not. I mean, that seems like a position that wouldn't necessarily turn over with a GM and coaching change, but that was the reason they were so tight-lipped about everything previously. So I don't know. That's a good question.
I mean, for me personally, I don't really care. I like the reports, but if they want to not let the public see what they're doing, whatever. Who cares?
The Chicago Tribune reports 11 practices will be open to the public. All 11 scheduled to begin at 10 a.m. and will require a free ticket for entry. Those dates are July 28, 29, 30, August 2, 3, 5, 7, 10, 11, 15, and 20.
And they're not doing joint practices yet, right? Or like they haven't announced it. Eberflus said something about like maybe sort of kind of.
I think he said he tried, but it's not looking likely this year. I think that's what I saw.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I think the biggest kind of question mark going into camp is probably the offensive line and what's going on here. So, whenever we have a line question, we always go to our friend Michael Gus, who is here to stir the pot with us. And Michael, how you doing, man? How you feeling so far after the mandatory mini camp reports?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you guys having me back. Always a blast coming on here with you guys. But yeah, I'm feeling great overall, personally. Now, as far as some of the reports that came out, it's a little confusing, right? I mean, there's a lot there to break down. I'm sure we'll get into it today. A lot more than you'd expect out of a mandatory, pre-pad OTA.
Yeah, I feel like it's been kind of this revolving door of just kind of similar questions. Why didn't the Bears bring in these guys? Is this the line they're going with? The whole 9 yards. Now, basically, the guy they brought in, Dakota Dozier, who was getting a lot of the 1 reps, they just put him on IR, so he's going to be on the shelf for a while. Maybe a blessing in disguise for maybe instead of Dakota Dozier, maybe we see a rookie. I hope we see a rookie over Sam Mustipher since this is where we are. Is it the best option? I don't know, but at least we can see what some of these guys, have right away before we go too far down the line and answer some of these questions. I'm going to start off with Braxton Jones. I mean, it sounds like he's really impressed the coaching staff and seemed like he was one of the guys that a lot of people had pointed to in the draft process saying, yeah, he probably shouldn't have fell that far and he has, starting potential. Michael, I mean, what have you seen from Braxton Jones just from your own film study, that we might like?
It's not surprising that Jones has looked good up to this point, especially in shorts. He's a big, athletic, long guy. I thought that was a pretty cool quote, when he was talking about some immediate adjustments he made of, what do you say? How do you put it? Throw them puppies, which is he's getting instruction to really, yeah, which is great. You big athletic guy, you want to see him. That's his number one strength. So you want to see him throwing those hands and using that length. Again, he's by all accounts, he's a smart guy. So it's no surprise that he's, impressed up to this point. Now we'll see when the pads come on, right? Changes a little bit when you go full pad, full contact. But hey, I'm glad that, they got one of those day 3 guys that appear to be, in the starting mix or getting, at minimum reps with the ones. Hopefully that's a product of Jones, taking that position by force, really impressing, other than him being the least undesirable option.
Well, Lucas had a side conversation with a former Bears person that said the coaching that these kids are going to get is night and day from what they got in college. Even the D1 guys, the Power 5 guys are going to see just much, much better coaching. But you got to imagine a guy from Southern Utah is seeing coaching that he's just blown away by. It's like, getting tutored by Albert Einstein. I don't think the coaches at Southern Utah, God bless them, gave the instruction to throw them puppies and punch people in the chest.
No, and that's a good point. I mean, it's a really easy trap to fall into. At any level, anytime you're moving up a level in competition, you were probably a guy that, don't get me wrong, did all the little things, worked extremely hard, that got you to where you need to be. But also, you were a big fish. Anyone who gets drafted in college, you had some natural abilities that maybe some other people didn't. So yeah, to get in a pro facility coming from, a smaller college and pro coaching and, probably it's almost an individualized coaching. There's room for development. He's got the frame, he's got the things you can't teach. Now hopefully, they can teach him the rest quickly, because the Bears, they need functional bodies.
Functional. That's it, man. That's a word.
My-
That's
Michael, with all the work that they've done with Braxton Jones and obviously bringing him in, and it's very clear that the coaching staff likes him. Are you concerned that, undrafted free agent looks like he might be one of the Bears' starting tackles and going to protect Justin Fields in his second year? And with that concern, do you have any feelings that, this could be a diamond in the rough type of player? We remember Charles Leno became a 7th-round draft pick and played for many, many years. And whether you liked him or not, that was still an accomplishment to where he was drafted from. Do you have the concern about him playing as an UDF? Well, not a UDFA. He was drafted in like the 5th round, wasn't he? He was drafted later rounds, but he'll be protecting Justin Fields. And do we think that there's a guy that can become sort of a franchise left tackle?
Yeah, I've been pretty vocal. I mean, everyone here is probably, anybody else on Twitter has probably heard it ad nauseum, that I'm concerned with the fact that they don't have a proven quality starter on the offensive line as it stands now. And I mean, that was true in March, and it's true to this day. So it's not a Jones thing. It's an all 5 of them thing. There is no floor just because we have no idea. Jones has never taken a pro snap. You can see the upside, and you can see the upside with a lot of these guys. Huge frame, great athlete, by all accounts, adjusting well to the pro game. But I mean, if there weren't areas to work on, if there weren't reasons to be concerned to your question, well, then we wouldn't have got him because he would have went pick number 5. His name would be Sewell or Tristan Wirfs. So yeah, I mean, it's not a Jones thing or a Patrick thing or spin the wheel, whoever's playing right guard today thing. It's more of a unit as a whole. This unit doesn't have a floor, and that's the concerning part. Jones is just a microcosm of that.
That's scary. Doesn't have a floor. Jeez. Michael's just dropping heaters over here. Functional floor is essentially the hot new name for the Bears offensive line as a whole.
That makes me feel really good about Justin Fields year 2. Yes.
Hey, you know what? He doesn't run 4.4 for fun. He runs because he has to. And now it's going to be Luke Getsy's job to get him into open pockets as much as possible. So that's okay. Lucas, do you want to continue to discuss Braxton Jones, or do you want to talk left tackle, right guard?
Well, I kind of wanted to just bounce off of Braxton Jones and go more to the which linemen are quote unquote with the first string right now, and kind of what we feel like the this new running scheme is going to look like. So there was a conversation on the timeline the other day about inside zone, outside zone, and it kind of got me thinking. What are the fundamental differences between the two, and what are you looking for in linemen, Michael, in these two different kind of schemes? And I obviously, you can run a mix of both, but from what we've heard so far, it sounds like the Bears are going to try and run an outside zone scheme. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that, Michael, and kind of, what kind of traits, the linemen we should be looking for in these linemen in these schemes.
Yeah, that's a great question. Something that comes up a lot. Most simply put, outside zone, you hear it referred to as wide zone sometimes. Really, in terms of linemen, you're looking for a lot of the same prototypical linemen. They need great feet, strong punch, overall good athletes. You're not looking for those big maulers that are gonna, fire out of their stance, try to get a good chunk of as much of someone as they can and just drive them in one direction. So in terms of outside zone, now what you're gonna really be looking for is the whole line reach blocking, right? So they're all going to be looking one gap to the play side. And look, I know, a lot of people play the video game Madden, right? So you think, they think stretch, which is partially fully incorrect. The whole idea of outside zone, right, is we're applying pressure. There's that threat. We're reaching. So everybody's trying to get, if you're covered, meaning if you look to the play side, if the play side is left, and I look there and there's a guy in that gap, I'm going to try to cover and smother him. So even if you go backwards, and it's going to drive some people crazy, I'm sure, the goal is to I cover, smother. It's generally how I hear it described, meaning that you just want to get a piece of them and take them any which way you can go. Ideally, you'd love to get your hips around and, set up an outside lane, but the purpose of that isn't necessarily to get your back to the outside. Really big misconception, wide zone or outside zone, overwhelming amount of the time, it ends up as a run finishing in between the tackles. And that's by design, right? If I'm a linebacker and, I'm concerned that big old Tevin Jenkins is starting to eat my, my head up 6 or head up 5, even, full shade 7. And I'm flying to get outside because I don't want to give up the big, now that running back puts his foot in the ground, there's a huge seam. And you see, trying to think of examples, Todd Gurley, that's a really good, heyday Todd Gurley. But, think of that, you'd see him, he's going lateral, stick his foot in the ground, straight up the field. That's typically what you'd see. Inside zone, a lot of the same concepts. Now, the core difference, like if you're, just trying to boil it down to one thing, core difference inside zone, you're going to see double teams on all the down linemen except for the backside end who's going to be unblocked. Either they're going to read them with the quarterback or they're going to bring someone across the formation. It looks like a trap block. It's got 100 different names. Split, I've heard sift, I've heard long wham, whatever the case is. Somehow we're going to deal with that backside player. We're going to double all the down linemen to the linebackers, right? So again, the whole thing about these zone schemes is the first thing these offensive linemen are going to do, and why, it's typically the same prototypical player. I look to the play side. If there's a guy there, I'm covered. If there's not, I'm uncovered. In wide zone, if I'm covered, that's my guy. If I'm uncovered, I'm going to try to get to the next covered lineman. So if I'm a center and my guard's covered, I'm going to try to get all the way. You see him push the guard off, and then that way the guard can get up to the second level. Inside zone, we're just going to double that guy, and when that linebacker shows, whichever way he shows, we're going to take a 45-degree angle and just double that down lineman to the linebacker. So a little bit more of a strong running, but a little bit quicker seams, less risk, less reward, I guess you would say. But oftentimes those systems go together, right? Because you don't want those defensive linemen and linebackers to know, am I being reached? Are they gonna double me through? I'm a backside end. Maybe they're reading me now. You don't want to. It's like anything. You don't want to give them any kind of cadence or rhythm.
So how can the Chicago Bears, with a lot of its new pieces on the offensive line, be able to, get the most out of this group? You've got a lot of inexperience. You've got a lot of new pieces. In teaching the Luke Getsy system, what's your thoughts or your philosophy on basically getting these guys up to speed fast so week one doesn't look like a total disaster?
Personally, and I know we've heard a lot about wide zone. I would be surprised if they really run more wide zone than inside zone, at least early on, because to your question, and I don't want to say it's easier to teach, but there's less things that can go catastrophically wrong. We won't rehash that way too long explanation we just went into. But if we're flat out missing a block in inside zone, that's probably a linebacker, and that's probably, if that's a great linebacker, that's a 1 yard loss, but it's probably a 1 or 2 yard gain still, assuming we execute that level 1 block. If we're trying to reach guys, and that's a very, very hard block, and that's the big thing. That is the wide zone or the reach blocks. Those are probably the most difficult run blocks, I would say, by far, for offensive linemen. And, that's where you can see some really silly things, right? That's where an Aaron Donald just, a guy trying to dig, as hard as he can to go get him. And that defensive lineman just, he's off balance, puts him on the ground. Now it's a 3 yard loss. So I would, if I'm the Bears, I'm keeping it really simple early on and making sure we can do the opposite of Matt Nagy. Let's find some things that we can do really well and let's do those things, and then let's build off of that. Not let's, throw stick spacing 150 times and then close our eyes and pick a random run play.
So just to go off that real quick, when you're talking about the reach blocks, basically getting to the second level, crossing guys' faces, do you think that's the end goal of this is to end up running that wider scheme, and that's basically why the Bears brought in more athletic linemen? We're seeing them an influx of guys who are just way better athletes up front. Do you think that's because that's ultimately the end goal is to run that wide zone?
Without getting super technical, I would say the end goal is for them to get to the point where they're equally proficient in both. So a lot of times the wide zone, any wide zone scheme is going to probably even have more inside zone worked in. It's just, all wide zone teams run inside zone. Not all inside zone teams run wide zone, if that makes sense. Again, because it's a little bit more difficult. There's a little bit that more goes into it. So I think end game for them is they build a complete system off of zone running, completely. I would be shocked if they didn't feature a lot of inside zone because, again, going back to that way too long explanation, it allows you to not, by nature, it's going to allow you to not block the backside defensive end, which opens up all the zone read concepts. I can't fathom that, you're a zone coach that, he does have a tree that wide zone, inside zone, everything. I can't imagine you look at Justin Fields and go, no, I don't want to work any option game into that. Like I think that, they're going to really desire to be a team that works both, keeps defenses off balance, and then that rolls right into their play action game, and all the branches off that main limb, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I mean, I guess to kind of rephrase my question, I'm talking about more so just the, your lineman kind of archetype there, is the more athletic lineman, I guess, better for a wide zone scheme as opposed to inside zone, or is it kind of interchangeable? Or does it not really matter?
Yeah, a little bit. And typically those are going to be the same prototype of player. It's very rare that you're going to have an outside zone or a wide zone, ace or specialist that isn't also good at inside zone. Really where the scheme misfits would happen was, a true gap player, a big gap blocker. Just the big maulers that, fire out of their stance, go straight downhill, that maybe don't have that feet and the athletic ability to dig.
Kevin Jenkins.
To an extent, I mean, that would be the closest example, but I think he's got the feet to do it.
Yeah.
You brought up a great point though. That is a player that is naturally right now going to be much more effective in the inside zone versus the outside zone game. And I guess that's where that distinction would come. Typically speaking, though, the great thing about this system is it's so popular now in the lower levels that all of these guys, I'm sure, have done it.
Since high school sometimes.
Yeah, probably lower. I mean, gap blocking is, everything's a cycle. It's gone for now, but it's starting to come back if you really look for it.
Yeah, definitely. I remember my team ran that, back when I was in middle school, elementary school, it was all gap blocking. But that definitely answered my question there about the lineman, and just what you were saying about, how good the lineman's feet are. I think Braxton Jones, that's the one thing kind of really stood out to me when I was watching his film is just how nimble he was on his feet for a really big dude. So maybe that explains, how the reps are getting divvied up or et cetera. But I'll kick it over to my friend Chris over here. You got a question? You chilling?
Chilling, learning.
Yeah, me too. That's why I saw that conversation on the timeline, and I was like, even this is stuff that's out of my I don't fully understand the differences.
I got the basic concept of power versus zone, essentially, like Michael was talking about with the power, it's more the big guys just trying to chunk and crush people off the line, not trying to reach, not trying to be athletic, not trying to be in space, either zone system. I think inside zone is something that Nagy was trying to do last year, but didn't do a very good job of, especially on double team and pushing guys into people or splitting off and taking the linebacker once you got to the second level. It was just kind of chaotic. But, the guys they drafted look to be athletic at their positions. Doug Kramer, Jones, obviously we've been talking about. It sounded like Zach Thomas got some reps at guard finally. Borum, Michael, do you think Larry Borum is pretty athletic and has good feet for a tackle? Or what's kind of your take as far as his athletic profile in this scheme?
Yeah, especially the pictures that came out of him on Twitter. I mean, it looks like he's lost significant weight. Really trimmed down a little bit. And last year, Borum was interesting because if you would have asked me that question last year at this time, I would, no. Borum was thought to be more of pretty much a gap blocker. He was kind of that mauler that people didn't know about his pass sets. And, there was some early stuff. Is he going to actually play guard? But I think last season, I don't know, you guys chime in if you agree. I thought it was the inverse. I thought the athletic and his feet and his pass sets looked really good. And when he got into trouble, it's because he was just walked back into the quarterback. Tevin Jenkins too, hopefully. He's had a full cycle now with good health where he can, really benefit from it, but especially Larry Borum. I mean, that first NFL offseason, kind of like you hit on earlier, when you have access to these nutritionists and these workout plans and these private facilities, I really, really, for this line to be functional before we can even talk about, being a line that can be something that improves to the average to above average range, they need a big step from really probably both of those guys, but at least one of them. I mean, one of them has to, by week 5, we have to be looking at him going, that's a good player. That's a player that's going to be here for a decade.
Well, like you said, with Borum last year going from pre-draft process to the draft, lost 30 to 50 pounds. Now he's lost even more weight. Sounds like Jenkins, from a few different accounts, has lost quite a bit of body fat this off season through diet and exercise. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about the No Name Football podcast with Kreutz and Jason McKee, because Tevin Jenkins was on there. But he had talked about on there his diet and just what he's been doing and how he has carb loaded in the morning before practice, essentially light lunch, protein and greens, and then just really thin dinners. So he's lost a lot of weight that way. Hopefully he's, taking care of that back and stretching it out and doing whatever he can to, be a difference maker on this team, is I guess is the easiest way to put it. Michael, you had sent that podcast to us. So why don't you kind of talk a little bit about what you heard on the No Name Football podcast with Tevin Jenkins and those former Bears?
Yeah. Well, first of all, from a personal note, hearing Olin Kreutz and Tevin Jenkins on the same podcast for me was really cool. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't want to speculate too far, so I will stick just to what he said, and nothing else. But man, you guys listen to it. It sure sounds like that his back is limited some of what he could do this offseason, at least. He'd kind of hit on, it sounded like not so much him, but the team didn't want him doing a lot of like back squat, he said specifically. And just some other things where, it kind of took me back where I'm like, oh man, how much of the offseason program has he been able to participate in? How much has he missed? It was a little unclear, but there was enough there to start to wonder, like, I hope this doesn't affect his development, like it sounds like it could have.
Yeah, just talking a little bit about Kreutz had asked Jenkins when coming off the back injury, what did that look like after the surgery and whatnot? And Kreutz said, or Jenkins said that they got him up walking like the day after the surgery, and then they had projected him to like not really be functional or doing workouts really for 4 months. And he said he beat that by about a month and a half. And then it was, and this is what I found interesting, just learning to trust his body again, to put that full weight on it and to not be scared of, I guess, re-injuring it was his message. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So if he's still building that trust within himself, and he shouldn't have been playing at all last year, in my opinion. I mean, if he's still talking about that and still thinking about that, and that's still a, conversation. And like you said, with the weight room, it's all upper body right now for him. He said, for the most part, or was last year, it was no squatting, no, I don't know what else he was even allowed to do per the team. So I'm very curious to see how this plays out with him over the next few months.
Well, I know Michael said, he doesn't want to speculate, but we kind of mentioned this last week, Chris, full speculation. We said, what if Jenkins is still hurt? I don't know. It just really seems like there's something up there, hope for the best for him, but it would be a huge bummer if the reason Jenkins is getting second team reps is because his back still isn't fully healthy, and it's just another question mark along the Bears line. Who knows? We still don't know why, if that was the reason he fell in the draft. Maybe it really is, and this is kind of the aftermath of it. So I don't know.
He did say the pain was gone, which is great to hear. But
right.
it just becomes trusting.
Yeah, like you said, it's a massive mental hurdle. And just the fact that he, obviously if you have a bad back, maybe you shouldn't be squatting a ton of weight, but the fact that he hasn't done any yet is kind of concerning. Even if he was doing, the barbell or, put a 45 or 2 on there and just stay light. It's like, if you're doing absolutely nothing on your back, putting any pressure on it, how are you going to sustain getting crushed by a 290-pound bull rush?
That's why I'm like, why was he even playing? 130,
yeah. No,
135
absolutely.
is heavy, Lucas. That's heavy. And you want to put 225 on this poor man? His back is tired, bro.
You know my point.
And that's the first thing I thought too, was when I heard that. And I was like, doesn't that just reek of a bunch of guys last year trying to claw at the edges of saving their job? Here, throw this guy, maybe this guy's awesome, but it makes me look great. Throw him back out there with whatever percentage that his back was at. Doesn't it just feel like the responsible thing last year was to shut him down early and make sure he was good to go, at this point right now?
That responsible?
That was a setback waiting to happen if it didn't happen. And it didn't do the best for Jenkins. He didn't, just being honest, he didn't look phenomenal last year. He wasn't, lights out. Obviously he was potentially playing out of position. Who knows if he was not 100% or didn't trust himself out there, if he would have even played left tackle better, right tackle better. It's really a lot of questions on why he was even out there if he can't even do squats.
So let's say, go ahead.
And more, just one last note on Jenkins in general. We talked, a little bit ago about trying to get a baseline of acceptability for this offensive line and, how low the floor is. it's a narrow margin right now, I would say. There's not a whole lot of room for error or misfortune as it stands right now. In fact, I would argue that they need quite a bit of good fortune for this, unit to work out, especially early. But I really struggle to see how that math works without Jenkins being a key part somewhere. And even to the conversation last week a little bit that I heard, maybe that even if that's right guard, but man, if we're really looking at a situation, because he wasn't at right guard, he was with the twos. It's tough for me to see a situation where this really works out well, without Tevin J. It's hard enough for me to see one with him, let alone without him.
Yeah, you pretty much answered my question before I even asked. I was going to say, without losing Dozier, and let's say Tevin Jenkins is not going to be available, what does this line really look like? But you look down the list, you've got, Borum and Braxton Jones, Lucas, Cody Whitehair, Mustipher. There's your 5, I guess. And that doesn't really strike a whole lot of confidence there for me. Any offensive line, and perhaps it's just my angry bias, but any offensive line that's including Sam Mustipher in your starting 5. Sorry, Olin Kreutz, don't hear me. Don't come kill me or choke me out. But any offensive line that includes Sam Mustipher in your starting 5 makes me really concerned for the Bears' offensive ability to move the football at a consistent base. So I was probably post draft and post free agency kind of hitting, feeling like the offensive line had a lot of positive upside, but I'm kind of losing some of that hopefulness and kind of wading more into a pool of concern.
Would you rather have Sam Mustipher or, oh man, now I can't even remember dude's name, the former defensive lineman that we threw out there at guard for a while, Rashard Coward.
Couchard?
Yeah. Couchard. Would you rather have Coward?
Can I take Alex Bars instead?
No, that was not the question. Sam Mustipher.
I'll take a bullet because you're not doing anything with either of those guys. I mean, I guess Mustipher's got the offensive line training, but both those guys just
bam. Now see, I got you. I got one vote for Mustipher. That's all it takes, Joe. Now you can fall in love with the guy.
I guess so. Bear down.
As far as the right guard goes, Gus, do you
move Doug Kramer into center and you make Lucas Patrick put Sam Mustipher on the bench?
Well, that's what we would like to see. But at what point are you concerned with the veteran center making the offensive line calls versus a rookie center? Or, I mean, I guess you could have Patrick make the O-line calls from guard if you had to until Kramer was ready to do so. But, I mean, I haven't even heard of Kramer getting any reps in practice, and maybe I missed it. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, who pushes Mustipher off that spot?
Zach Thomas.
Not yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally like Zach Thomas the most out of this draft class for the Bears. I think Braxton Jones will be pretty good, but I like Zach Thomas's style of play. Personally, I don't know. He's one of those guys that I think can make a difference in camp because his big MO is, he gets to the second level really well and he looks to finish blocks downfield. Mustipher is one of those players. He's a very intelligent player, but he just gets his ass kicked up front by bigger D linemen. And that's the one thing that terrifies me of him playing guard for the Bears this year. So I really hope someone can unseat him, one of these rookies, whether it's Carter or Thomas or someone. But I don't have much faith in Mustipher even moving from center to guard. What about you, Michael? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, he struggled just like you said, with being undersized and, maybe a little bit of power aspect at center, I mean, it's just going to be worse at guard. That's going to
Right.
become a bigger problem at guard. We went through the way too detailed, zone breakdown. Well, one of the features of that is that your center is never by himself. I mean, that's literally, that is a feature of this. That's why that's one of the appealing parts. It's, so they can't put a big nose guard over the center and, mess things up that way, because it's going to be a double. And he still struggled there. I can't. I mean, you talk about, struggling to see a positive outlook. I can't see one at all where Sam Mustipher is one of your best 5 offensive linemen. And I mean, think about that. We're at the point right now, long-term outlook for the offensive line where best case scenario, Sam Mustipher is only one play away from being a starter in opposed to being an unchallenged starter. So, again, that speaks to the floor of this unit. But to, directly answer your question, no, I can't see a successful unit that features Sam Mustipher in any kind of starting role anywhere ever again.
Would you feel the same way if it was still Dozier there?
Pretty much. I mean, a little bit better, maybe. But again, I mean, that, maybe the ceiling's a little bit higher there, but the floor is no higher. And again, for me, it all comes back to this. I don't want to be overly pessimistic. I do see the upside of this unit, but the floor is so low. I mean, we're in the basement, right now. Sam Mustipher's playing out of position at right guard as a starter. That's just where we're at right now. So yeah, I mean, Dozier would have raised the ceiling a little bit, but that's never been the issue. The issue's been, how ugly this could get. And I mean, boy, it could get ugly.
There's not really many options out there right now to kind of fortify that position either. I mean, I feel like you kind of have what you have at this point, unless, there's a surprise cut in camp, and there'll be a reason that said player gets cut in camp. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, if you were to tell me that one of these rookies, their floor would be the same as starting Sam Mustipher, you just got to throw him out there and let him learn on the fly.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, which again, I can't imagine coming to the conclusion that Sam Mustipher playing out of position at right guard would be the preferred solution. But, and you said it too. I think I tweeted out, and we had talked about it a little bit. I was surprised to not see any of the rookies really getting meaningful reps with the ones. I mean, my preferred, going into camp, my hope was exactly that you could bump Patrick out to right guard, because he would provide a floor there. He's one of the only guys that's probably higher floor, lower ceiling, type of deal that they really have on the offensive line. But he would provide a floor there, and then have Kramer at center. That was an idea I liked. But either way, I mean, you got 4 day 3 rookies. I would hope one of them could beat out Sam Mustipher for right guard. And if they can't, I mean, where does that leave you?
So, a couple of the guys, well, Cole Kmet specifically had said with this training camp or mini camp, whatever season we're in right now is essentially glorified passing camp, right? You're not really going to get much out of the run game. So, how much do you think we see different in late July, August with the O-line movements, opportunities for guys to get spots? And I guess what benefit is it really to see these guys at these different spots now if, they're not hitting and they're not getting an opportunity to really physically show what they have?
So, I see that. I've seen that talked about quite a bit, and now definitely the pre-pad, because again, there's only so much you can do when your primary job is blocking people. There's only so much you can do in no contact. Mm-hmm. But these reps are really important for like the cohesion of the unit, the mental reps, because they're going to go up to the line. They're going to be looking at maybe players probably like dummies, or trash cans old school. And the real value, isn't obviously blocking anybody because nobody's blocking anybody without pads on. But, going through the calls, right? We're going to identify the front. We're going to go through whatever, the new verbiage. And again, we're just going to build the speed of that thing and that's often overlooked with the offensive line. I mean, you got to just step back and think about it for a second because I know on the surface that sounds maybe kind of silly. Like, what do you mean they're going through their calls and that's really important? Well, it's great to be able to take it really slow in pre-pad because what's going to happen when the pads go on is now you're looking at live people. You're thinking about your pass set. You're not necessarily thinking about what we're calling the front and, what protection. Halfway through the cadence, somebody moves. Well, you better have those reps with those and that trust in those people where, Justin Fields is halfway through his cadence and all of a sudden the front shifts a little bit, which, mandates a different blocking assignment. That's where those reps can build that speed. So we don't, do what we did last year where there's just like, 3 techniques not getting blocked and and just getting free runs into the backfield. So I, with all that being said, I really think there is something to the fact that they had a pretty consistent starting 5 out there. And look, these guys are professionals. These guys, know all of this much better than I ever will. But yeah, where there's smoke, there's fire, I guess. And they're not throwing those reps away. They're doing it for a reason.
No, for sure. And that totally makes sense with cohesion and togetherness and, 5, who said it last year? 5 punching as one instead of, or one fist instead of 5 fingers punching or something like that. Whatever the quote was last year is applicable. I mean, it makes sense. And you want all these guys working together, especially in a more advanced blocking scheme, like a wide zone or even on an inside zone. Cause if you're supposed to double team a guy and you just go off and do your own thing, obviously that's going to be a problem for the rest of the crew and change everybody else's assignment. So, then it's just street ball and it's chaos and people are just throwing their body at whoever. And that's when penalties happen and injuries happen. And it's not completely throwaway reps. It's guys that are in there with the same starters day in, day out, building that camaraderie. Hadn't really thought about that. So that's a great aspect, Michael. Appreciate that insight.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, another way to explain it, which I did explain once to me, which kind of light bulb turned on in terms of the communication, just because, that's the nitty gritty boring stuff. There's not a whole lot of people that have been, looking at a front shift and, oh man, like you said, the guy next to me I better be confident that he knows what, I'm going to do and vice versa. Think about in whatever you guys or anybody listening does, at their job, think about somebody that you've worked with for years versus somebody that just started last week and how much more effective you can communicate with that person. And, maybe it's in text message or it's through a computer system or, whatever your field is. Well, when something, maybe something unexpected happens and, I don't want to say emergency, but depending on your field, there could be, an emergency situation or a, time sensitive situation, how much easier it is to communicate with that person and be on the same page and, not be going back, double checking and having those missteps than it is with somebody that you've never worked with or, someone from a different department.
Oh, 100%. I have many, many working experiences that I can go back and think about, but I used to play offensive line way, 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 way back, when you guys were just a thought in your daddy's eye.
The leather helmet days. The leather helmet days.
No, this was more like Moses parting the Red Sea days. But, we still played football because that's how old school I am. Now, I remember we had a play where if there was a guy over you, you blocked him. And if there wasn't a guy over you, it was a big pull outside, when you hit the linebacker. I played guard, so big pull outside and you hit the linebacker. My dumb ass forgot which was which. So there's a guy over me and I was like, oh, this guy's going to down block him, right? Cool. I'll get the linebacker on the outside and my running back got destroyed. So you absolutely need to know your assignment and know what your teammates are going to do, or you will get somebody hurt.
And that's a great point, Chris. And I mean, and so I'm sure and just for anybody else out there to, again, give a little perspective, go watch when a quarterback starts cadence and just think about how small of a time that is when he's halfway through and then they say a word and snap the ball. Hey, if something changes or something happens, and you probably know from experience, Chris, no matter what level you play at, this doesn't change. A lot of times, you don't get the luxury of the pre-pad. That's why the reps are so important, of that center clearly communicating with you. Hey, look, this guy did this. Now they're lined up this. So this is the new assignment. No, that guy smacks you on the side of the helmet and points and, lets out some inaudible sound and then snaps the ball, because that's all there's time for. And if you don't know what that means, then Justin Fields, he's going to have another highlight tape like has been going around Twitter where they just don't block any of the front four.
Not good. Not good at all.
So bad.
This is back when offensive guards were 145 pounds. So, Chris, we appreciate your service. Gus, I got one more question. We've talked a dozen times on this podcast in the past handful of weeks. Is who's really making the call with the personnel decisions? Do we think it's Ryan Poles? Do we think it's Matt Eberflus? Do we think it's Luke Getsy or even Chris Morgan? So we've all had the offensive line coach. We've all had our own kind of discussions with that, as a lot of this doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. So as the resident offensive line expert of the Believe in Monsters podcast, what's your take on how these decisions are being made and these reps are being divided up?
Is the word collaboration banned permanently, or how does that work? Because that would, I think it probably should be banned, but that's the word that unfortunately sticks out. I think it's a group effort,
We're going to go with partnership.
There you go. Yes.
Or something else. There's lots of synonyms, cooperation, alliance. We can go with any of those, but collaboration is gone.
Yeah, I think it should just be relegated to the dumpster of BU and 202. I think that it is a group effort and needs to be for, if this thing's going to work long term, then that needs to be a group effort. But ultimately, I would say it's the coaching staff. Poles does not strike me as someone who meddles, and none of them are going to admit to it. But didn't Ryan Pace always come off as a little bit of a meddler? To me, he did. But Brian Poles seems pretty straightforward. Hey, I got you the guys. This is what I like about them. This is what we agreed on. Now go get me a starting five that's not going to embarrass me for 6 months.
It's not a bad thing, but Pace medal. I don't know. I guess so, but this is the time where I want my GM and assistant GM meddling, because they actually know what the fuck they're doing, with the offensive line. So we've spent 53 and a half minutes talking offensive line, and that is the hot topic of this camp. Everybody's talking about it. One thing that some other media podcasts and whatnot have brought up is, what the fuck is happening with our weapons? Like, nobody's really showing out. Pringle looks like, he's not the bag of chips we need him to be. Tajay Sharp, I guess, has made a couple of plays. Dante Pettis he's looking somewhat okay.
Mooney, though.
What? Mooney's Mooney. He's starting to. I guess he still looks like he is just as good as he's ever been.
A 2+, a 1B.
Yeah, and Cole Kmet could be a big part of this offense. Michael, what do you want to do? See, like when we talked about him having 60 catches and 600 yards last year, that blew my mind. People were bagging on that man every single fucking week, dude. Like you would have thought guy had 30 catches for 250 yards. Like you would have thought he was Michael Pruitt, but no. He had a decent season last year.
Zero
and I don't
touchdowns, Krogman. Zero.
I will
touchdowns.
hear no Notre Dame tight end slander on this podcast, or I will kick you out. Michael, what are we going to do with our weapons?
So I'm glad you brought up Cole Kmet because I think a lot of Bears fans are going to have to just be okay with the fact that this offense is going to be average or better, which it should be. I mean, we should have some expectations for year 2 of Justin Fields. That almost certainly is going to be a result of Cole Kmet again being your second in reception and yards. That number probably needs to be a little bit more inflated from what he did last year. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't think I know someone's probably going to tell me about he's second in separation on Tuesdays when it's overcast or, whatever they're going to use. But I mean, he's not a guy that's probably going to go for 60 catches where, we saw Cole Kmet do that. So yeah, I think that, in terms of their weapons, they need Cole Kmet to replicate that consistent production. And to Joe's point, yes, he needs to score touchdowns. Hopefully Justin Fields this year in year 2 in a system that, would make sense to a 7-year-old, unlike the one last year. Hopefully Justin Fields throws more than 7 touchdowns and, that would be a reasonable expectation that Cole Kmet could bring in some of those.
My son will be 7 in January. Should he understand football by then? Because this kid's he's not gonna get it by then.
More than
Nagy's offense is a great starting point. They ran shotgun handoff. That's all you got to tell. They never did anything other than just a basic offset inside zone, and then they ran sticks. So hey, look, did he hand the ball off? No, then look about 3 feet past that guy and you'll see the guy he's going to throw the ball to.
It'll be like sticks. You mean like pickup sticks, Dad?
Yeah.
You play pickups, which is about as complicated as Nagy's offense was.
Well, pretty much, yeah. It's either, you run offset inside zone on first down or we
play Candyland.
18 motions, 4 resets to have 4 different guys run to each hash 3 yards away from the quarterback, turn around and get smothered.
Crushed.
So I got to go back to what Chris was talking about earlier. Have you ever heard of whatever blocking scheme he was talking about, Michael?
Which one?
That he ran in high school, where you pull if there's no one on you.
Yeah. That's like old school wing T, like 2 down, 1 around, pin pull.
I was gonna say, is that what you ran, Chris? Wing T.
So we ran like triple option. Yeah, it had a wing a lot.
No film on this offense. Only stone carvings.
You know how you sing about it every single week, Joe? The T formation and all that stuff. Man, do your homework. Do your research. Go listen to Vic Fangio.
No, but speaking of running schemes, blocking schemes, I will finish on this note here, and I want to hear what you guys have to say. Will Khalil Herbert claim the Chicago Bears backfield by the start of next year? Meaning, will he show enough to say, hey, we're going to let David Montgomery go and Herbert will be our feature back moving forward? I think yes. I think it's going to be a 60-40 split, and I think at the end of the year, Herbert will be the better running back out of the two. That is my bold statement. I like Herbert. I think Herbert's got juice, man.
Hopefully he's not on the juice.
He's got juice unless he's running a kickoff back. Then he's pulling a fucking bus, dude. Bus full of juice.
He looks so slow on kickoffs.
Why? How is that possible?
I don't know. I love David Montgomery. He's just not explosive at all. I think Herbert really might be the feature back toward the end of the year.
I don't know, man. David Montgomery ain't gonna go down without a fight.
No, and I think Montgomery is poised to. I mean, to go back to the weapons question, how is this offense good? David Montgomery and Khalil, the rushing attack and working everything.
And Ebner. I think Ebner's going to have a big pass catching kind of duty out of the backfield as well.
But yeah, since we already looked at, we looked at wide zone, right, and what we're really looking for. Contrary to the belief on Twitter and or on Xbox Madden, The idea of wide zone is not to take the handoff and, run like you're on fire towards the sidelines and hope to get around the corner. It's to be patient, to use vision and stick the foot in the ground, run through an arm tackle, and, you're out of there. You hit that seam, one cut, gone. I think Montgomery, people are really, really misevaluating what a good fit he is. Because, again, they see Khalil Herbert. They're like, great, run wide zone, and we're going to give him the handoff and see it. He's going to take 25 carries outside the tackle, which that's just not how it's going to happen. But I like both of them, and I think I think there is a good chance by the end of the year that, especially, and we'll see contract demands. Any extension would have to make sense for the Bears. You're not going to overpay at running back right now. But man, having a 1-2 punch, having a 60-40 split, and keeping each other mutually fresh, hopefully healthy, down the stretch, I think that's a great recipe. And then, hey, that's going to be a good problem to have if they have two really good backs, and one of them's so good he wants more money, and the other one is good enough where he looks like he could be the feature back. That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like last year, Montgomery went down for those few games. Herbert played really well when he started, and then when Montgomery came back, they didn't really use Herbert. Like, they weren't using him right. They weren't, they were putting him in weird. Like, they should have been definitely giving him more carries, in my opinion, down the stretch there. But classic Nagy, just completely not utilizing guys to their strengths. Look at what the Packers do with AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones. They ride the hot hand, and either one of those guys could go off and have a fantastic week. You don't know which it'll be, and two kind of different style of runners, but just both effective in their own ways. So yeah, no, you're totally right. If the Bears rushing attack can have that, it'll be a huge help to the offense. But just wanted to hear you guys' thoughts on that before we wrap up here. But I do have a lot of faith in Herbert. I really like his game. I have nothing against Montgomery. I do think Herbert does give you a little more juice. Montgomery, the one area Montgomery has lacked, in my opinion, has been those really big home run plays. I think Herbert gives you more of that.
And what I want to see, which we didn't see at all the past 4 years, which is criminal. I want to see some sets with both of them on the field. We're talking about not having weapons. Well, there you go. There's two weapons. Find a way to get them on the field together. And without going super into it, hit me up on Twitter if you want the detailed explanation. But the running that split or that sift off the inside zone really is a nice way to use two halfbacks, because it's not a very demanding block. You could get away. A willing blocker, doesn't have to be a good blocker, can execute it, which, lets you, I don't want to say hide that player, but lets you be a little bit more unpredictable in those sets with two running backs.
When you can run it with Blasingame in there as well. As a
Blasingame, baby, let's go.
Don't get me started on fullback, man. That'll be a whole full podcast next time.
Lucas, to answer your question, I don't think that Herbert becomes, a 70-30, 60-40 split guy by the end of the year. I think it's Montgomery's job all year, but I do think that, he could give them enough comfort to let Montgomery go if the price is not correct, a year from now or an off season from now. But that's too far in the future for me. I want to see David Montgomery catch 50 passes this year, because they way underutilize him in the passing game. He's amazing in space, makes people look just ridiculous when he has him out in the flat. So pass him the ball, Luke Getsy, and as long as you listen to this podcast, you'll be fine. Michael's got you covered with the offensive line. I'll tell you how to pass it to the backs in the flat, and Joe will look at you funny, and it's the end of the story.
If we're throwing the ball at David Montgomery 50 times, then there ain't no way Cole Kmet is getting 60 catches, Chris Krogman.
But you have no faith.
Well, see, hopefully this year, and this is going to be a novel idea to any Bears fans that, just started watching in the last 4 years, but it should maybe, it'll be normal to get more than 3 consecutive plays before you give up the ball for 7 minutes. So maybe there's enough love to go around, hopefully.
not only that, you can utilize screen game and just passing in the flat to run the ball through short passes, which we rarely saw in Nagy, but it's also an effective way to get, short gains that have potential to go all the way. So, man. Yeah, I don't know. That's all I got for tonight. When I was saying 60-40, by the way, I meant Montgomery 60, Herbert 40, but even that might be a stretch. We'll see. I think Herbert will be really good.
Oh, I thought you said take over as the main guy, basically. That's why I got.
I kind of mentioned it. I said potentially, but ultimately, I think that maybe the most you would get is like 60 Montgomery, 40 Herbert by the end of the year. But even then, it's close to a 50-50 split. But,
sure.
I'm with Chris Krogman where I think Montgomery's going to kind of lead the way, but at the end of the year, if he's asking for too much money, Khalil Herbert's going to have given them enough to say sayonara, buddy, which will make me sad. But business is business.
My mom went to Iowa State. Always got a soft spot for those guys. All right.
Gus, we've been asking you questions all night long. Do you have any questions that you've been pondering before we close it down?
What's so you guys actually have asked quite a bit about what I think about the offensive line, and I think it's pretty clear what I think of. I think there's upside, but there's a horrifying floor. What's your take overall? I guess we could go around. What do you expect out of this unit this year?
Total shit. Honestly, sadly.
Bottom 5 unit, Joe?
I haven't really looked at the other 32 teams, but there's not really much that gives me too much. Luke and I have been buddies for a long time, and I've always been. It starts with the offensive line. Everything starts with the offensive line. I was probably one you'd call a truther because I would always, the offensive line doesn't protect him, yada, yada, yada. Well, yeah, I'm very hopeful for Justin Fields. I think he's got all kinds of talent, and I'm really hopeful for the new coaching staff. I'm really, hopeful for Luke Getsy's scheme, making a lot of things work a lot better than the last couple of years. But as far as skill and cohesion, I'm pretty concerned about the front 5. Pretty concerned.
Lucas.
Chris? Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
Now, we talked about this last week. I mentioned it to my guys here, Joe and Chris, in our group chat that, when Poles got hired, I was really, kind of psyched that they finally brought in someone who, it was an ex-lineman and really cared about the line. And he brought in Cunningham, and I was like, all right, this could be awesome. Like, I want to see, them remake this line. But then just after free agency and the draft and still waiting here in minicamp, I'm like, all right, when are they going to make a move? They can't not make a move. My confidence has definitely wavered in them. I've kind of said before, I almost expect them to hit on one of these kind of, mid-round draft linemen, that one of these guys will be pretty good. And maybe that's Braxton Jones or one of these other guys. Who knows? And if that's the case, awesome. I'll be over the moon. But just my confidence in the line that they provided right now. And I mean, granted, they did have limited resources, but on the flip side, I do think they could have done at least a little bit more to kind of solidify it. My concern level right now is probably at a 7 or an 8.
Yeah.
Especially with the Jenkins news. And it's not even, I'm not even worried as much, as weird as it sounds, about Braxton Jones and Larry Borum. It's the interior of that line is just terrifying to me. That's really what scares me. But, the scheme will help a little bit. I think Justin Fields will be good despite of a bad line. And, I think overall the line's probably a bottom 10 unit overall this year. But I still think there'll be some other positive upsides to this. Maybe a player or two that we're like, okay, this guy can play, and we know for the future. But I would say right now I'm fairly concerned about this unit.
So you guys are depressing, and I will bring the light back because, look, Lucas, to your point, I'm confident or at least have high hopes for what two former offensive linemen can do, what they have, what Cunningham has a track record of having done, and to look at what they've done. And you can have your opinions on whether or not they should have brought somebody in, a more well-known name, a more historically, decent offensive lineman rather than an unknown rookie or a Dakota Dozier or whatever the case may be. And that's totally understandable. But to have faith that these guys will hit on one of these guys, will find a diamond in the rough, is what I'm leaning on. I'm also leaning on, like you mentioned, Lucas, this scheme to help hide the inefficiencies of this offensive line, at least until they can be a cohesive unit, so that you look at a guy like Justin Fields, who should make a mediocre to bad offensive line better with the right scheme, the right play calling, the right design. And obviously we have not seen that as of yet for this kid. Everybody out there is like, oh, you're going to get Justin Fields killed. Well, I think they're all aware of how not to get the man killed, and they're going to do everything they can to scheme, double team, give him help, everything like that. They've brought in, a couple different blocking style tight ends and fullbacks. I don't think these guys are there to just watch Justin get his ass kicked. So all of these things within the preseason thus far, or the mini camp, to Michael's point, with cohesion and reps and it meaning something. And Lucas, you've brought it up as well. It all does mean something. But hey, if Braxton Jones is that guy, we are light years ahead of where we thought we'd be. If he's a starting caliber left tackle in the NFL as a 5th round pick out of Southern Utah, we are light years ahead of where we thought we would be. And if Tevin Jenkins, if there is a problem, then please get right, and be the guy that did get traded up for and get drafted at 39, where a lot of people thought he was a good value, regardless of if it was the Chicago Bears that took him in a shitty regime before. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I'll put it that way. I'm not going to look in the dumps yet.
It's a good perspective to have, and I will finish on this. That I said it last week, Chris. I just want the Bears to play their best 5 linemen, and if that means you move Larry Borom or you move Tevin Jenkins to right guard, get it done. Do it. Don't look back. Who cares where they were drafted, what they were drafted to do? If that gives you your best line, do it. If Jenkins needs to play right guard because Borom is killing it at right tackle and Jones is killing it at left tackle, you do that in a heartbeat. And bear down, baby.
Bear down, Chicago Bears. Make every play clear the way to victory. Bear down, Chicago Bears. Put up a fight with the might so fearlessly. We'll never forget the way you thrilled the nation with your T formation. Bear down, Chicago Bears, and let them know why you're wearing the crown. You're the pride and joy of Illinois. Chicago Bears. Bear down.